It's going live now. All right. Well, let's see how we go. See if we can keep this this technological stuff that we're doing really good. Welcome all today to today's wine appreciation. We're actually going to focus completely on one winery. And today, helping me out with this is the novice wine drinker who's drinking beer at the moment, Pat.
Expat beer drinker.
Expat beer drinker, that's the one. Dan, the guy who I've worked with for over 10 years now, and is probably one of the more knowledgeable, well, actually you could probably happily be a song if you needed to.
If I needed to?
Yeah, if you needed to. And me, who's a bit of a know-it-all about everything, Andrew. So we've actually looked at Brockenchack wines. Now, I will just say up front, we are employed by Brockenchack. When I say we're employed by Brockenchack, Trevor Harch is the owner of Brockenchack Wines. He owns several companies, one of which is Purple Palette. So you can take as much or as little information from us as you want, but we are pretty honest about our tastings. If we don't like it, we'll tell you we don't like it, we'll tell you why. But so just a quick background on Brockenchack. So Brockenchack is actually an amalgamation of his 4 grandchildren's names, Bronte, Mac, Jack and Charlie. So he amalgamated those into the Brockenchack name. So Trevor Harch is the veteran for that. He employs Joel Machos, I believe. Joel is the viticulturalist for it. If you know the Machos down in Barossa, their family name is particularly connected to the Barossa family legacies of viticulture. So, and he's got some exceptional vineyards of his own that he sells. Particularly, I remember his one for St. Helens wines. They've got their Machos Shiraz, named after the block that they get it from. So he's the one that looks after the vineyards for the most part. We also have winemakers for Trevor. We have Jo Irvine. She is a contract winemaker that Trevor uses, as well as Sean Koleski of Laughing Jack Wines. Also, we have one of the grandchildren is, I want to say it's Mac. I could get it wrong. So if I have it wrong, which one's Darren's son? No, Darren's son's Mac. I think it's Jack. Jack is the winemaker for one of the winemakers down there learning about making wine in Brockenchack in Eden Valley. It's actually situated in Eden Valley in Barossa, so if you're trying to figure out where it is, essentially you've got Adelaide, you've got Barossa. In Barossa you've got the Barossa Valley floor, you've got then Eden Valley and then High Eden Valley. So his vineyards are about 480 metres above sea level, so they're much cooler than the Barossa Valley floor, and that shows with the wines. And we're going to talk a little bit about the wines as we go through them, but the first one we're going to look at is actually, they do a Riesling, which we have spoken about before and done a vertical tasting on. They do a Zipline Shiraz, which is probably one of our biggest selling Shiraz in store, and is honestly just an exceptional value for money wine at 20 to 25 bucks.
And it's one of our best selling wines next door as well.
Yeah, it's in the bar, yeah, it's fantastic. Then you've got here's Jack Harrison, which we've done in a few other wine events. That's a big, rich style, and there's William Frederick, which is this top line one. So we're going to look at some of the wines that are. He also has a Charlie Chardonnay. We're not looking at that there. We're going to look at the Brockenchack Pinot Grigio. We're then going to look at the Hare Hunter Pinot Noir. We're going to look at the Megan Jane Grenache, and then we're finally looking at the Great Scott Sparkling Shiraz. We're trying to, in the terms of palate weight, getting up to the Sparkling Shiraz, because it is still based on a big style Shiraz.
Still quite big.
So yes, so now the Pinot Grigio came out, the first vintage of it was 4 years ago. When he bought the site, it really only had Shiraz on it. It's 40 acres, it might be slightly bigger now, but it's only 40 acres. And it was all predominantly Shiraz plantings, and some Riesling plantings actually. That's right, Shiraz and Riesling. And so that's what he started with. Since then he's actually expanded into, and it's all of the grown vineyards. So it is Pinot Grigio, obviously Pinot Noir, Grenache, and Cabernet and Chardonnay. So it's sort of like 4 seasons in one block, essentially. But the first one that came out was remarkably different because it had a really pink blush to it.
Yeah, it was good.
It was really. I know it did separate it out from a lot of the other Pinot Grigios that we had in the shop at the time. That you looked at it and you went, oh, it's pink, and people viewed that as a bit of a fault. And all that really is it's the sits on skins for a little bit too long, or can be chosen to sit on skins, which it does add a bit of flavonoids into it, which are quite lovely. But since then they've been making the style crisper, a bit lighter, not quite as unctuous as it used to be. So it's actually a much more Pinot Grigio style wine. So you've got lots of pear. I get white blossoms in that as well.
Honey blossom.
You get honey blossom? Yeah.
It's like honey sort of.
Pat, what are you getting?
Get like green apple, like
In the acidity in the back?
Yeah, some kind of acid, like the acidity from the apple.
Yep. So that'll be the hard malic acid that you get from the back there. Yeah. For a wine that's meant to be simple, fairly neutral, and easy drinking, it's actually got a lot more flavour compounds to it that actually bring a lot more. And I'll say the word complexity. It's not a simple wine, which is good, but it's got, as we just mentioned there, we've got 3 different flavours in one. Each of us picked up a different flavour.
A little bit of palate weight to it.
Yeah.
It's not
For
bright and watery.
For most of the Pinot Grigios I've had, it's much more weighty.
It is much more weighty than the other ones. One of the reasons it could be the higher altitude, a bit more towards an Alsatian sort of. Actually, it's completely wrong. I can't say the word Alsatian. If you've ever had an Alsace wine, you'll know that I'm speaking out of my arse. So essentially, what I'm saying is that because of the cooler climate, it's getting a lot more lengthening time for growing. It's not being picked early to leave that high acidity into it that Italian wines do have a tendency to have. And it's not being hung late on the vine for like the Alsace Grand Crus that we've had. It is picked probably physiologically right and about perfect time to pick it, where it's actually developed enough flavour and character to actually make it a complex wine and actually look interesting. Whereas the Italian one has a tendency to be a simple fruit, acidity, crisp, clean, easy drinking.
Yeah.
So this one for me has got a lot more interest to it. It's always funny when you start reading. I had it today where a girl turned around and said, "So what's the difference?" "Oh, I want a particular winery, their Pinot Gris." And I said, "Oh, they've got a Pinot Grigio." And she goes, "Oh no, they had a Pinot Gris." I said, "Oh, a couple of years back they probably sold it as a Pinot Gris, but they're now making it a Pinot Grigio because Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio is the same grape." And as we were talking about just then, Italy makes a really light, clean, easy drinking style, quite neutral for Pinot Gris, for Pinot Grigio. Pinot Gris is on the other end of the spectrum, big, weighty, oily acid, huge amounts of fruit to it as well. That's from Alsace. So in the New World, much warmer than either of those areas, but also falls into the spectrum of one or the other. It can actually, we don't make a drier style Pinot Grigio like they do in Italy. We don't make a big, full-bodied Pinot Grigio like they do in Alsace. We're sort of in the middle. And depending on, if the winemaker is clever, he tries to tell you what the wine is going to be more like than anything else. Because if it's a Pinot Gris, it's a heavier style. If it's a Pinot Grigio, it's going to be a lighter style. If it is, marketing is a big part of it though. So
they're going to make it for the Australian palate.
Well, they make it generally because to try and show the conditions and the terroir and the whole bit that they're trying to make a good wine for. But what actually happens is marketing comes in, and Pinot Gris might be on the ascendant here, and Pinot Grigio might be not as popular. And of course, that means that suddenly all the wineries are putting out a Pinot Gris. And then then Pinot Gris might have its day, and a Pinot Grigio might be an ascendant, and because people are looking for that lighter, drier style. And people start saying, "Oh, I'm making a Pinot Grigio. It's exactly the same wine."
Yeah.
They can label it differently because it is literally the same grape.
It's just a variable term depending upon the market at the time.
Completely marketing driven if you want it to be.
Yeah.
How's that for confusing?
Yeah. Well, Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio have always confused me. Like light and heavy is pretty much the easiest way I can think about it. And that makes a lot of sense, especially with the Australian Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigios that come out. There's some really light ones, and then some quite heavier style ones, like more like
Well,
this.
let's compare this to the Yarra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't a different price point, don't get me wrong, this is about $16, $17. Yarra's 10.
Yeah, it's
But-
crisp and
Yeah.
green apple sort of
Yeah.
characters, where I get a lot more hair
Yeah.
and white
There's-
fruits.
And we did Lethbridge as well, remember? We did Lethbridge
Yeah.
Pinot Gris. And
Yeah.
that was, the body weight was slightly more than this, a bit more intensity of fruit, it's also $30. So yeah, so that gives you an idea of where, if you're shopping, you just need to be aware of the terms that can be used. And more to the point, try to be aware of the marketing that's involved as well. It's always good to read the back of the bottle, generally, but let's have a look at the back of Trevor's bottle. And we'll see how much they've actually written about it. By carefully focusing on one ability to deliver the correct style and ripeness obtained from the Eden Valley. Subtle tropical notes, rich texture, and a clean finish form the elements of the style. So basically what they're saying is that this is what they consider to be a Pinot Grigio. They're aiming for that sort of style. But because of the warmer climate that Australia has, the higher altitude and more growing conditions, this is going to be driven naturally a bit more towards the Pinot Gris sort of phase. But that being said though, it's nowhere near the body of a Pinot Gris. So, as I said, falls pretty much dead in the middle there. So,
I couldn't see.
you couldn't see?
Needed some eyes.
Yeah, I know, I've got the same problem. Mind you, this lighting's not the best in the world for me to read either. So yeah, just reading it, they think when it's actually physiologically right, which you really should be doing. You really should be getting your grapes physiologically right before making them. Otherwise you have to start playing with additives afterwards.
So this one had, but wouldn't try and sweeten it up at all? Or?
No. No need. In Australia, we don't need to chaptalise our wine. Chaptalisation is actually a term used in winemaking for adding sugar, and it used to be beet sugar. Nowadays it can actually even be sugar.
Oh really? Straight into wine.
Straight to wine, yeah. Well, not into wine, into the must. So once you press the juice out, you remember the way that we sweeten wines is either you let it hang longer to let the water evaporate out of the grape, sugar, and therefore intensifying the sugars, or you can actually add sugar into the must, or chaptalisation. It's actually named after the French minister Chapelle, who actually allowed that happening in French wines. Or it can be botryticized, so it can actually be shriveled by the grey rot, or botryticized Senicera, or it can be sweetened by adding in by adding a sweetened wine to it, like Amarone, and blending it that way. Or you can add what's called a Suss Reserve, which is the German term for adding a grape concentrate into it, essentially a sweetened grape concentrate to the back of it. And there are ways you can actually sweeten wine. This one is unsweetened, so it's not sweetened by anything, but I reckon it has a little bit of residual sugar left in it, and I reckon that's a choice made by the winemaker to give it a bit more complexity.
Still very crisp.
Yeah, it's still. Well, the acidity is still going to be crisp though. So when we say sweetened on there, we've only 2 to 3 grams at best. So yeah, so what do you think of that one, Pat?
I like it. Like I think I much prefer the last vintage, the one that had the blush to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just. I don't know how
It actually,
typical it was for a Pinot Grigio, but it was.
at that time, it was actually everyone was doing it. Do you remember
Yeah, there was
every
a lot
Pinot
of
Grigio we had?
Yeah,
It's
it
almost
just
orange.
yeah,
but it stood out on the shelf, and that's kind of what drew my eye to it in the first place.
Yep.
And it was only about $5 more than like the really cheap end of the Pinot Grigios, and it was awesome. Like I loved it. Like me and Georgia used to go for like 2 or 3 bottles a night.
That was her favourite, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I get a little bit too much acidity for my taste. It's very nice, it's refreshing, but I don't think I could drink much of it before it would cause me to get heartburn, basically. But
And this is a man who drinks Pinot Grigio for
I know. But it just, it seems to just be a little bit acidic for my palate.
I get that, actually. I do understand that. But the reason you have to have the acidity to that level is literally to balance off the flavours. So
it's flavours.
Yeah.
You probably just have to eat with it, though.
And that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
I try to do the European thing of eating.
Yeah. Eat everything.
If I can. Yeah. So, what do you reckon would go with this?
Well, that's what I was about to say. What's its best sort of match?
Cheese and dip.
No, chili prawns.
Really?
Yeah, a little salad.
Oh, I suppose hot for the acidity.
This one particularly, blue cheese would go really well with this because you've got sweetness in this, or a little bit of sweetness and fruit weight, up to get the saltiness of the blue cheese.
This is cheddar, but it's getting blue, I think.
Yeah, and ironically, korma, curry. So because the sweetness of the residual sugar and the fruit flavour of this will match really, really well with the korma curry. Wow, that cheese is bitey,
It
actually.
is.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Look at that. Clean that cheese straight off the pellet.
It certainly cut the cheese intensity back, and actually, yeah, it's cleaned the palate quite well. I see acidity is great for that. Now, to give you an idea, oh hey Davey,
Davey Stabler.
dry July, really Davey? Really?
Helen actually thinks it's got a little bit too much acid for her as well.
Yep. Actually, Davey, just quickly, when are you dropping up your beers? Because we've got brew crew this weekend. Yeah. Heart me where you want, Davey.
I heart you.
So anyway, now we're going to go on to a way to prove that I don't know everything about wine. So, this Brockenchack's Hairhunter Pinot Noir. This wine, when it was planted, when I said, oh yeah, so you're planting Pinot Noir, I said, are you planning on making sparkling? And I was told unequivocally, no. I then said, so you're sure Pinot Noir is going to grow in a vineyard that has a lot of depth of character for Shiraz. Pinot Noir and Shiraz are not two grapes that really generally sit beside each other. We've had one blended from Tokar in Yarra Valley, but that's because the Shiraz out of there is really, really light. The Pinot Noir out of there is really, really light, making just generally a light dry red. If you want to see, before we start, what do you reckon the true characters of Pinot are? And I'll ask Pat first because he's the novice. So Pinot Noir, what do you reckon?
Like light, fruity, like fruit forward. Can't really think what fruits would be.
Okay.
Cherry.
No, I'll go to you in a second.
Something a bit lighter than cherry, like can't think of it in a second.
Okay. Dan?
I usually get cherry.
Cherry, yeah.
And an earthiness.
Yep. Helen, have you got any opinions? We're happy to hear it. For me, when I think of Pinot Noir, I look for a light to medium bodied wine. Sometimes you can have some real dense characters in there, but generally light to medium body. Usually red fruits at front, be they cherry or strawberry or whatever. An earthy savouriness into the back that has a really long finish. That is my classic Pinot, and that is essentially a Burgundian style Pinot tasting. So when they planted this in Eden Valley, I was dubious at best. I actually said, I said, well, if it doesn't work,
What do you reckon? Strawberries.
Yeah, strawberries. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, strawberries is a classic one, particularly out of Marlborough. You can get the underripe strawberries coming out of Adelaide Hills and places like that too. Or you can get the really robust, almost plums coming out of Central Otago. So when I was over in France, we saw lots of red berries, strawberries. Some sites even show a little bit of cranberry to it. It's actually quite really determined by the terroir itself. What I actually find though, as I've said, is that it needs a cool climate, but it needs to cool to cold climate to get the best out of Pinot. And remember, Pinot berries, Pinot Noir, I think we've done this thing with Pinot before. the reason it's called Pinot is because it's like a pine cone, really tight bunch.
Oh, okay.
You know, pine cones.
Yeah, on that.
Yeah, so just over there, they can't see that over there. So a tight bunch of grapes all together, very thin skinned, which means it's really open to disease and open to damage from the weather, and particularly heat. So again, when you look at Barossa, you look at a really hot area. It's like, oh. So I was honestly, but I don't think so. And obviously they don't listen to me for everything. So when he released the Hare Hunter, was it last year or the year before?
12, it's 17.
This is the 17. It must have been the 16. Yeah, I think must have been the 16 that came out. It might have been the 15 even. It was 16, one or the other. I was having to prove wrong. So if you are a Shiraz drinker who wants to drink a Pinot, this is probably where your style is. This is much more towards your Central Otago style Pinot Noir or Mornington Peninsula Pinot Noir. So, guys, from the tasting that I've just given you, are you getting any of that flavours in there?
I definitely get like I definitely get strawberries.
Yep.
It's a lot more heavier than I expect from a Pinot.
Yep.
But I kind of like it. Like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a dense. Yeah.
The color. Yeah, the color's a lot deeper. It finishes because the Pinots that I've had before haven't finished that long.
Mm-hmm.
This one actually does. Like,
yep.
Yeah, you can taste it all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
For me, well, actually, Dan, yours. Just tell us what you think.
Love the tannin. Love the
Yeah, soft,
goes
round.
from front all the way through the back of the tongue.
Yeah.
And it's juicy, so it's making my mouth water.
Yeah.
I'm not getting the earthiness. I got earthiness on the nose, but I'm not getting a lot of earthiness.
Yeah, I get a lot of earthiness in the nose, and when you try and taste it,
It's fruit.
it's. I get lots of big red cherry. I do get overripe strawberries, maybe. You know, those really sweet strawberries.
Yeah.
It's
Really
really
coats
dense.
your mouth,
Yeah, it's really dense. It's actually a medium plus body, essentially, what it is. Yeah, so Helen said quite full flavour, and I have to agree with that completely. Probably a lot more flavonoids or flavours to this, a lot more esters to this wine than you would see from your Central Otagos or your Marlboroughs even. This is definitely like a really big Pinot. So, will it be a Pinot lover's drink or will it be a Shiraz lover's drink? You can be both. You can actually enjoy both.
Oh, yeah, Pinot lover would enjoy it.
Like, this is what a Pinot lover would drink during winter. Like something a bit more hearty. Like,
if you're a Central Otago Pinot drinker, that's your jam right there. That is exactly what you want. If you are a Burgundian Pinot drinker, that would be far too much fruit, far too fruity. If you're just an Australian red wine drinker who is looking to try a lighter style and getting into that, this would be the one to go for.
Who made this one?
I reckon Joe made that. I'd a guess. Normally I'd say Sean, but Sean's particularly a straight Shiraz producer at the moment. What's the sound in the back?
It's just a little story, really. Winemaking is about pioneering instincts and enjoying fine wines. This Pinot Noir is a favourite varietal of ours, and our winemakers.
That'd be Joe in that case, yeah.
We wanted to deliver an elegant Pinot Noir out of cool climate, Eden Valley. So elegant. Quite large, I don't know if I'd say elegant.
It's robust.
Yeah. It's lovely.
It's probably elegant for the Barossa particularly. Let's face it, most of the Barossa's wines are fairly ball-bearing.
Do they grow a lot of Pinot?
No, they grow Pinot, but generally for sparkling making.
Okay.
Sparkling production. So now we start talking the clones. When it comes to the clones, you've got a whole bunch of sparkling clones that they use. I believe this is a Burgundian clone. I could be wrong, but it's big. It's actually very powerful for Pinot. Intensity of fruit. The good part about it is everything's on point though. There's nothing wrong with the wine. It's exactly what the winemaker is aiming for. It's fresh, it's bright. I reckon, my personal opinion is if I'd bought this wine, I would lie it down for about 5 years. Because
I was trying to work out why it was hare hunter. So our two grandsons spent a lot of time hunting hares on the vineyard, and particularly in the patch of Pinot Noir.
Oh, okay.
So its score is currently sits at 4.
Okay.
In favour of the hares.
I don't know, mate.
Actually, I will say
Lost 2 grandkids, got 4 hares.
the reason that this was planted is because Trevor's vineyard. You know how you always imagine vineyards being very flat and very. Trevor's is actually he's got quite a, when you're looking at it from pub road up, it sort of does this up and then just drops off the escarpment, and his other side of it over here sort of rolls up into a rolling area, but down the front it actually drops down into like a gully.
If it doesn't fit, hit it with a hammer.
Yeah, that's what works for me. Yeah, so it drops into a gully where it's quite a cool area, and that's the area that they're using it for their Pinot.
I haven't been there.
No, we really need to get down there. We need to do this down there, I reckon.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So yeah, listen to that one also. On the assumption we still have a job after this tasting. Yeah. That being said, though, it's bright, it's fresh, it's clean, it's got all the flavour profile I'm looking for. Actually, the earthiness is coming in the back now. You've let it breathe a little bit.
I'm getting it with a bit of food now.
Yeah. And honestly, the Pinot for me is a food wine. I got sent a thing today about a food matching thing for Brockenchack wines, and it was almost all universally Spanish. And if you had wines from Spain, Spanish people generally go for high acidic style wines to go with their garlic and lemon sort of flavours, or they go for, as Tempranieros, Riojas, Grenaches. They really look for fruit to balance off their wines, because there's a lot of tomato and paprika and spice. So whilst the Shiraz from Brockenchack would have been way too big for her, it would have just dominated, the Pinot, I actually suggested thoroughly they should be whacking this in there. So I'm looking. I'll look for it. Oh, it's fantastic, yeah. As an antipasti particularly, it's great. So, that's the Pinot Noir. So, Helen, what do you reckon about that?
First of all, what's the price point of that Pinot Noir?
35 to 40?
Yeah, I think it's around 37.
Yeah, 37, 35, something like that, yeah.
Which is pretty good, as the way Pinots go, especially
Well, so you're quite paid under 35 for a decent New Zealand Pinot.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say decent.
Yeah.
Pay 35 and up for a good
Yeah.
No, you don't want to find a lot of Pinots under
No.
that
But
price.
especially Australian Pinots,
Yeah, we've only got 2 Pinots, I think, out there under 22 lots.
No, we got more than that.
Oh, do we?
Hell yeah, we've got heaps.
We've got Zilzi and we've got Frenchman's Cap. What else has done got tonight?
Mr. Fox,
Oh, okay, that's the reason.
Peninsula.
I forgot that was
Two
there.
tails.
they've got all the New Zealand ones there as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
You stand
Oh,
corrected.
sit corrected.
It's correct. We're happy to be corrected. Yeah, Helen likes it, that's good. We're going to go on to now the latest one, the latest offering from Brockenchack, which is the Grenache. Now, as anyone that has drunk with me or buys wine from me knows, I love Grenache. I will sing it from the heavens. I think Grenache is excellent.
That colour is
Oh
excellent.
yeah, look, it's purple. It's straight out purple.
That's as purple as I like it.
Sorry, Pat. So, this is named the Megan Jane. This is actually named after Trevor's PA. So, she's been with Brockenchack for, longer than I've been with the company. Probably at least 2 or 3 years before I was. That's about 13 to 14 years.
They didn't have a vineyard then. But he was still his
She was his PA then.
Well, that's a good assistant if you take
Yeah,
it from one
keep
place
it.
to another job altogether.
Well, here's the irony. Megan lives in Queenstown.
Oh, okay.
Trevor lives in Eden Valley.
It's a long
That,
distance relationship.
that's a skilled PA, if you ask me.
Yeah.
That is impressive. Okay, so again, we'll talk about what is it that we look for in a Grenache. We'll start with Pat.
Well, Grenache is still a new one I'm getting used to. I've only really ever had like GSMs and things that Grenache has been involved with. I think most of the time from Grenache I get like the darker fruits, like I kind of look at it like Cabernet without as much tannin and a bit more fruit. Yeah.
Dan?
Usually get quite floral notes out of Grenache, but I'm not getting a lot of floral in there.
Okay, for me, Grenache, depending where it's grown, as a general tasting room, red fruit, it's going to be a medium-bodied wine. The alcohol is a little higher, so you need therefore more flavour to balance off the alcohol. Acidity is not ridiculously high, it's actually a mid-range acidity. So it's a really good wine to put fruit into, which is why GSMs are made.
Yeah.
Grenache comes in. Where's Grenache lacking? It's lacking in a bit of spice. It's lacking in a bit of body. It's usually a lighter style red.
It's quite like this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a lighter style red. So therefore Shiraz and Mataro bring body to the wine. Spiciness comes in from the Shiraz, and tannin structure comes in from the Mataro. That's how a GSM is put together. So when you're breaking those apart and pulling them apart, when you're looking at it, the Grenache is bringing the fruit flavours and the alcohol level to it.
Yeah.
But it's also a medium to light bodied wine.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we have, this to me is lighter than the Pinot, flavour-wise.
Grenache is actually sold to most people as a Shiraz drinker's Pinot. Now I'm getting massive amounts of blue fruit through that. Blue fruits, a little bit of black fruit, but mainly blue fruits. Really huge amounts of fruit to it. The alcohol is not burning at any stretch, and it's a 14.5, isn't it? Or
I got more alcohol out of the
out of the Pinot, yeah.
14.5, yeah.
Yep. So at a 14.5% alcohol wine, you would expect it to be a little bit warming. It's not. It's bright, it's fresh, it's vibrant. It is everything a Grenache should be. The only thing it probably lacks, and that's due literally to the terroir, is that I like some Grenache that comes out of cooler climates that come out with a bit of spiciness to it. So through 2011, when McLaren Vale had its horrific vintage, and it was a horrific vintage for McLaren Vale. The Shiraz, the rains came in and just stayed the whole way through. Shiraz suffered really, really badly, but a lot of guys picked their Grenache early and brought this beautiful white pepper into the wine. And in fact, because it forced people to re-evaluate what they wanted from their wines, it actually forced the whole change of Grenache coming out of McLaren Vale. So where it was a big, almost ported style, it's now become a lighter, much more elegant, refined and spicy style. Which is great, because that's what I think Grenache is more about. This one is a lot more towards your huge fruit-driven styles that you're going to see out of Barossa generally.
It's full fruit.
It's full fruit, yeah. But it's only...
I still like colours.
Yeah.
The colour is so intense and beautiful. It is really pretty.
That makes the wine for me.
But, again, the flavour's there. It's not... the flavour is there, it's quite forward, but it is not overpowering. It's not ballsy or blousy in any way. It's
grippy.
It's a little bit grippy tongue on the back, which is great. But I think it's more the
I'm
acidity.
getting up the front.
Oh, okay.
After the fruit flavour passes, and then it's quite... it's almost sticky grippy, not tannic.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like the acidity is much more prevalent in that one.
Acidity? Yeah.
Yeah, because my cheeks are watering a lot more, but also the tannin, when I ran it over the area, I'm not getting a huge amount of drying tannin to it. I'm getting some lovely rounded and
I'm getting
rich
some
stuff.
numbness.
Actually, yeah. And that's from the alcohol.
I'm getting the numbness on the front of the tongue.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yes, I'm quite pleasantly happy with that. We're pleasantly singing
Happily
for
numb.
Yeah. Comfortably. numb.
Comfortably numb.
Yes. That's right. So I'm going to say, if you want to just give us your opinion on this, feel free, because This has always been a Eden Valley has probably one of the most iconic wineries in Eden Valley is Henschke. And Henschke's, a lot of their wines, apart from their Mount Edelston and their Hill of Grace, which is Shiraz, almost everything else they do is Grenache based. So I have always seen the wines coming out of Henschke, particularly they buy a fair bit from the Adelaide Hills, so they also get quite a lot from Eden Valley, that's because that's where they are, very Grenache driven. So Grenache does kind of fit with that whole gamut of what I expect to see from Eden Valley. So this one, completely understand, completely identify why it's grown in Eden Valley and why it is, and what it is. So very, very impressed with that. I can't wait for Trevor to produce too much of it.
And do a DSM?
Yeah.
Me too, I was just thinking that.
Oh yeah, Brockenchack do a DSM would be
That'd be awesome. But unfortunately, they need to grow Mataro too.
He is not sweeties like some Grenache wines.
Yeah, and that's it. See, Grenache with that forward fruit, some people actually can see it's sweet. And in fact, some Grenache, like the ones out of Languedoc and Roussillon, when I was out at Roussillon, I went to Cave de Roussillon, which is like a cellar of Roussillon. Went in there and met the most awesome guy. I just went, oh, you're my brother from another mother. Because he said, oh, what do you want to learn about? And I said, oh, I want to learn about Banyuls and about Roussillon. So he took me through, he said, oh, we do tastings. So I said, that's good. How much do you pay? He goes, oh, well, what do you... Oh,
how much are you going to drink?
How much are you going to drink? What do you want to do? I said, I'll do everything. And he's like, okay. So he said, look, what we'll do is we'll work out what you drink and then afterwards. Cool. So we started with some Grenache based stuff out of Roussillon, and because almost the whole area down there is Grenache based. They've got lots of Shiraz and other things too, Cinsault, a bit of Carignan. But they actually have this beautiful wine culture down there, which is just absolutely phenomenal. So tried all the wine, tried these Grenaches, they were great. Then we went to what's called the Banyuls or the VDNs, the Vinda Naturals. We talked about those in fortifieds. A VDN is made by letting the fruit hang for quite a while, taking it off, pressing it, adding alcohol to it early in the ferment, then putting it into big glass demijohns, leaving it out in the sun in these glass demijohns for extended periods of time, like we're talking a year or so, then making the wine from that. Yeah, glass demijohns, so that it's slightly cooked.
What alcohol are they at?
They're generally about 14 to 16% alcohol, depending on what.
Yeah, but what type of grape alcohol? Or?
Yeah, it's grape alcohol. Yeah, like Mark. And we went through Banyuls, and I discovered that's how I thought about Banyuls. And then I discovered that Banyuls obviously is the region, and they make a whole bunch of different wines out of it. And I was like, wow, this is just fantastic. And we went through white Banyuls, all the way through river salts, Moray, a whole bunch of regions with all these wines, and we went through. It would have been nearly 16 to 18 wines at the end of the day. And by the way, we were pouring glasses like this. So Roz obviously wasn't driving because I was the European driver. So therefore, I've had now 18 wines.
Roz wouldn't have been walking.
Oh, we had to get to Cadiquí over the Spanish border, and then on to Barcelona after that. So it's like, okay, no worries, we can do this. We did the wine tasting, went through them all, and at the end of the day, because I was talking about my store back in Australia, and I was talking about how I really loved what he did in his store and so. And two more people came in, and we're at the end of our tasting, and he's like, I said, oh, would you like to do a tasting? And I'm like, oh, that's great. And they were English, and so I was actually able to relate to them. All the stories he told me that we had to work with in broken French English, I related all the stories to them. So we did the whole lot again.
Another 18.
Another 18. So I was...
Sounds like a big day.
Oh, and this is before 11 o'clock. Anyway, so we did that again, and they're like, oh, and they bought a few bottles around the place, and they're like, oh, that was really lovely. And they were so lovely to run into someone who knows wine, and they wanted off. And I went, oh, how much do I owe you for 36 tastings? And he went, no, don't worry about it. You've just done me the biggest favour by explaining everything that I've just taught you, and he said you did it perfectly. It's almost like you lived here. And I went, oh, thank you for that. So I got off the entire tasting for free. I got some photos with him and stuff, and had a great time. And I still contact him every now and then just to find out what's going on over there. But fantastic.
Bonus.
Oh, Vicky Jean's watching.
Hello, Vicky Jean.
Hello. I wonder if she's in the bar watching or if she's not.
No, she was home when I left, cleaning up her style.
Okay, so Helen says this is very easy drinking, and I have to agree. It is a very easy drinking style of wine, and that's why I like Grenache. When it comes to drinking Grenache, you don't have to sit there and ruminate over it. You don't have to struggle your way through, chewing through it like you do with some Cabernets. It is a great wine for pretty much everything you do. You can have it with Spanish tapas.
Because I thought it goes good with the olives.
Yeah. You can have it with Spanish tapas because Grenache is grown in Spain, majorly grown in Spain.
I think it's the oiliness that makes it. The oil coming out of the olives and stuff. With the wine is just good, and the wine just strips the oil away.
And the salt in this goes with the sweet there. So easy drinking. You can have it with this. You can have it with lamb. You can work almost all the way up to a Hungarian goulash or beef bourguignon. In fact, we had a Grenache with beef bourguignon.
Slow cooked ribs that I had last night for tea.
Oh, you need to stop. You make me really sad now. If I knew you were having ribs, I would have been there. Oh, that's lovely.
So how would Trevor go about making a juice? Then he'd have to buy in.
He'd have to, he couldn't do it unless he plants Mataro. He wouldn't be able to do it. But
could he source juice from another
absolutely.
vineyard?
Yeah. But he's very about. It's all about his vineyard.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money he spent on it for buying it, because this vineyard produced wines that went. Produced grape juice that went into Octavius.
I don't know what that is.
Octavius is Sam Smith's or Yolumba's top wine.
Yeah.
Apart from the Cabernet which is the Cabernet.
So that's where the grapes came from.
Yeah, originally they were sold to Sam Smith with their Yolumba, with their Yolumba winery, for Octavius. So that's kind of why he sort of looked at it and bought it. Was he went, what's the provenance of it? What have they sold to before? How good are the grapes? So he made all those decisions.
How much was the Grenache?
$35.
35.
$35, yeah. He made all those decisions before
Buy
buying the
3
vineyard.
bottles, I'll give you a discount.
Oh, no. We'd give you a discount anyway.
Yeah, one.
But so he made all these decisions early on. So you have to admit, for a guy who was essentially a builder that drank a lot of wine, he has really sat down and educated himself. No one's really sort of taught him. He's talked to a lot of people. And he's done the smart thing by talking to people and listening, asking insightful questions, and then taking that information and applying it to his purchases. You sort of can't deny that takes a bit of skill, because a lot of people are quite
He just
happy.
has that business.
He really does. If you ever talk to him, he's an amazing guy. Very passionate, and I mean passionate with a capital P. When he comes in here, he did a tasting for us at the shop one day, and it was hysterically funny, because it was like, it was only the Riesling and the Zipline Shiraz. That's all we had. No one just released those. That's all they had at the time. And he poured the wines, and everybody in the shop, a guy who drinks 4X Gold, suddenly got a glass in his hand, and was suddenly bombarded by Trevor by going, "How good's the Riesling? Try the Riesling!" He's like, "Whoa, Jesus! Oh, that's very lemony. Yes, that's what lemon. That's what I was seeing." And it just really, the guy at the end of it just bought a bottle, I think, to escape. But then, of course, you got Shiraz drinkers, and really savvy Shiraz drinkers walking in, and sort of go, "Oh no, I only drink my such and such Shiraz." And Trevor goes, "Try that." The guy tries it, and says, "That's pretty good." And then Trevor would talk the spiel and tell him all the information. It would be so passionate that by the end of the conversation, the guy's bought a 6-pack and walked out the door, and you can just see him walking out the door, stopping, looking down at the wine, going, "How did that happen?" It was pretty impressive, actually. I love watching him work. I'm like, "Oh, but he's very on point. You can't take him off
No,
his tangent.
he's on the track and
He's on,
it's good, but he's very approachable.
very approachable,
He's our big boss.
and he's very honest about what he does too. He'll tell you up front exactly what's going on. Because the one thing I really dislike in winemakers and in reps particularly, but winemakers as well, is when they just lie.
Yeah, they make it up as they go
When
along.
they make it up as they go
Hello,
along.
miss.
Come in, take a seat.
Hello. You'll feed me wine.
Well, yes, we will. The
Oh,
Grenache-
sorry.
Grenache
Grenache
is
is
beautiful.
awesome.
Okay. Well, since you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got the.
I got a ring.
You got a ring? No,
Got
all
it?
good.
Yeah.
We'll look elegant.
That would look good on
Okay.
camera. But smash! The cheese is still good.
So, we're now going to go on to the Great Scott Sparkling Shiraz. Now, the Great Scott Sparkling Shiraz
That's
is named after Trevor's daughter's Trudy, her husband, who unfortunately passed away. And he made this as a homage to Scott. And he called it the Great Scott, which is, really lovely thought. Now, I have sold a lot of sparkling Shiraz in my time, and I get a lot of comments of,
really good.
why does it not have a cork? And the simple answer to that is, it doesn't ever you need a cork. There is no dosage in there. But there is carbonation.
Plenty of carbonation.
I thought you
That was
flipped
very
that
tricky.
off.
No, that was just.
If I caught that, it would have been better.
It would have been. Or if it went straight
Yeah,
into
it was
the olive.
straight into the drink.
So making for this.
That's Scott.
That is Scott.
Scott saying cheers, boys.
Back boys, have some more. So essentially, what it is when they make sparkling Shiraz, they take a finished Shiraz wine. They then bottle it, add the what's called tourage, which is a little bit of yeast and sugar, sugar syrup. Put it in there, and they crown seal it. And the reason it's crown sealed rather than corked or anything else is because it would pop. So they want it to actually have a secondary fermentation to go through, and then it would actually, once the secondary fermentation's done, normally you'd remove the lees, or the yeast, and then you put a cork in the top, after liqueuring it with what's called the dosage. So this, however, is made in what's called the Charmat method, which is they've taken the finished Shiraz wine, they've put it into a vat, they've done the lees, the yeast and sugar into that to create the carbonation in the tank. The tank itself is, so the carbonation occurs, so the secondary fermentation occurs. They then draw the juice off into bottle and crown seal it.
So it's carbonated in tank,
Yeah.
not in bottle.
That's right. And because they're racking it off, they don't need to dosage.
Yeah, leaves all
yeah.
the dead yeast in the bottle.
All the yeast in the bottom. And they don't really want to sweeten the wine because it is a full fruited style wine anyway. So this is actually essentially the same juice that Zipline's made out of. So let's have a look at it. So basically, if you're buying this for $20 or $25, you're buying a Zipline that has essentially gone through an entire process and then bottled in a much heavier punted bottle, because you can't put it into a thinner bottle. It's got to be at the same price.
That's insane.
Business sense doesn't make any business sense at all. But
It's got to be done. I don't know if we've got our order right, but
what's that?
I think maybe we should have gone that and then the bubbles. Then that.
Oh,
and
it started
then
with bubbles.
Well, you couldn't really start with bubbles.
Oh,
You
it
can't
was
get
dark.
it white.
Yeah.
So I would have gone with that, and then the bubbles, then the Pinot, then the Grenache.
We can go back and
Yeah.
we'll go back and do the Pinot.
How's the Pinot looking?
It looks excellent. Big full fruit though, so it's
I
not.
love it. Look, first time I tried it, I just fell in love with it.
Yeah. For me though, that's you can taste the Shiraz character.
Yeah,
running
yeah.
into it. And this is why I put it at the end, because I think the Shiraz is still very dominant, whilst the Grenache and the Pinot both showed more overt fruit. It's actually been the fruit's been dumbed down a little bit by the carbonation.
Melts in the mouth.
Yeah.
Peter Russell says.
Yeah, it does.
Lovely fruit in the Grenache, melts in the mouth.
Yeah.
What temperature would you have the sparklings at? Like, if there's-
Lower temperature. You'd have it at a lower temperature just to because generally it's at 4 to 6 degrees is the sparkling normally. Shiraz, you probably have it a little bit higher, about 8 to 10 degrees.
Yeah, so it's like you sit it outside before you start drinking it.
Because most people are drinking.
White wine fridge.
Yeah.
Most
That's
people.
essentially you have a white one.
Yeah, most people drink a sparkling, and all they're really looking for is the bubbles and the acidity.
Yeah.
Okay, there's not a huge amount of fruit in champagne, but when it comes to something that's got flavour and esters, and you want those to release to get that aromatic component, but you still want it cold, and you still want the carbonation that you want at a lower temperature.
Because most of the people I know who drink like the sparkling Shirazes and all that kind of stuff, it's usually on Christmas morning,
And that's the big time for it.
and they want it cold, at like real cold.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was the kind of taste they're going for, or like with this kind of thing. Like I think this is the perfect temperature for it right now, and it's probably been sitting out for about 20 minutes now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing it in the actual glass and see the bubbles.
Well, you're not going to be able to see the bubbles.
No?
Not
I
really.
want to see bubbles.
It's too intense. The depth is too low.
You're intense.
I am intense. Actually, you know, we've completely forgotten to talk about the foods.
Food.
We started with the food over there, and we just went on to the tasting notes.
That's true.
Sparkling
I can't see
Shiraz.
the bubbles.
Yeah, see, told you. It's like, oh, look at the bead. There's no bead. So.
Oh, you get just
Oh,
the right light you can
you
see it.
hold it right to the light.
Yeah.
Put it in your mouth and have a taste, because
I
that's
was
where
going to
you,
drink it too. So.
yeah, that's where the bead is. You can look at it all you want, but it's when it goes in the mouth, and then you're gonna. It's got a bead to it. It's not got a bubble. So the way to tell that is when you put it over your tongue. If you get large popping like a lemonade or a Coke type thing, that's bubble.
Yeah.
If it's finer, it's bead. If it's just an entire mouth-filling explosion of little bubbles everywhere, that's called mousse. So that's how we write about sparklings. So you're looking at, you know, if it's an unstructured wine, it'll have bubble. If it's a good structured wine, it'll have bead. If it's an exceptional wine, it'll have, you know, mousse to it. But just quickly, while Pat was talking about it, this goes with breakfast. I can actually attest to that.
Every drink goes with breakfast if you try hard enough.
Yes, but this one we had maple syrup, pancakes, butter, and bacon, and it was the best match I've ever had with this. It was Canadian breakfast. Canadian breakfast.
Yeah, bacon and pancakes.
That was with
Yeah,
Joe.
we had that with ham and like peanut ham stew, and it was brilliant.
Oh, okay, wow. This also goes with a Christmas
I've
turkey.
bought a bottle of this just about the last couple of years that I've had Christmas and Mum, and we've done that for
Yeah,
breakfast.
it's
Actually,
great.
one of the best food matches I've ever had with a sparkling Shiraz was actually a beef and barley soup.
Oh, really?
It was amazing.
Yeah, the peanut ham soup, it goes really well. Like I don't know why.
Yeah, that was
Surprisingly, it also goes with a dark chocolate mousse, Chinese roasted duck, and barbecue ribs.
Yum.
Actually, I can imagine
I
that
had
going
slow
well with
for
ribs.
dinner, and Andrew's a little jealous.
I am. Gutted.
Price point, Peter would like to know.
What's
How
that?
much? Price point?
$20.
As I
Price
said,
check. Oh,
price check for the sparkling Shiraz, $20 to $25.
bargain.
As I said, it's the same price as the zip line, which, when you consider it's undergone an entire another winemaking process, put into a heavier punted bottle, it's just crazy. For me, anyway, that's my opinion.
Please, sir, may I have some?
You may have some.
Some Pinot, please.
Oh, Pinot!
No,
I told you my wife was a paedophile.
Oh, I knew he'd go there.
Yeah, I know.
Can't help himself.
actually, that was more of peanut as
I
well.
would like to point out my wife was actually having a dry day today.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's not happening anymore.
Not sure what Peter was referring to.
Yeah, it is cheap.
Opal.
Oh.
Price point, this is great. Opal.
Opal?
And then Helen said we always have sparkling Shiraz with
Christmas turkey,
Yep.
completely, yeah, I agree.
And yeah, cheap. Bargain.
Mm.
We
And
don't
look,
sell
if-
cheap wine, we sell
we sell good wine.
affordable
Inexpensively. But when you look at sparkling Shiraz, knowing that any sparkling Shiraz has to go through the full winemaking process of becoming a Shiraz, then generally undergoing a Charmat method or method traditional if you're Peter Rumpel, So that's an entire another winemaking process on top of that.
It's
Going into a much heavier punted bottle,
How long
much
does it
thicker
take
glass.
as well? For like if you're doing a traditional style and you had to
Yep.
turn it
No. So if you're doing method traditional, which is Peter Rumble does that, it depends on the lees amount. So we make 6, 8, 12, so 12 to 18 months. You can leave it for longer. Generally, it's usually held at about 6 months for this one, because they're not looking for any autolysis. They're not looking for any breadiness to come into the wine, because it's a bright, fresh style of Shiraz anyway. They're not looking to create more flavours in it. They're just trying to get some carbonation.
They want it bubble.
Yeah. I would like to point out, I've also seen a YouTube video and a Facebook video where a guy gets a bottle of Zipline and a soda stream and makes sparkling Shiraz. Surprisingly, it turned out quite well.
This is the wine that my parents took to France and gave to a French winemaker, and he fell in love.
Oh, really? Oh, well done,
With
well
your
done,
parents
Mike.
or wine?
Probably both.
Well, both.
Yeah. So, that's a nice little wrap up for today. But thank you all for tuning in. We'll just have to now complete our day of work with. We'll drink the rest of this, I guess. But before we go, I just want to say a big thank you to Darren Naylor for supplying the tasting stock today. And I hope the review meets your satisfaction. We
I'm
did
just going to say the Pinot's actually even better than I remembered.
Oh, okay. That's good.
It's grown up a little bit.
We have to vote. What do we like the best?
So what do we like the best?
I don't get a vote, I've only tried two.
I know what I actually like the best, but I'll hear what you guys say.
I'm going with the Grenache, personally.
I'll probably go with the Pinot.
Yeah.
I was going to go with the sparkling Shiraz.
Oh,
Rose, you love the Pinot.
I'm loving the Pinot.
Oh,
But
looks
I love
like-
the Grenache as well, because I'm a fence sitter. I'm known for my fence
Yeah.
sitting ability.
Yeah,
So.
yeah,
Yeah,
make a
and-
decision.
and you're biased. You're his wife.
Yeah, but
Actually, if I
she
had
didn't
to
choose what I wanted.
If I just had to sit and drink, I'd go the Pinot. If I was putting it with food, I'd go the Grenache.
Well, that doesn't help either.
Surprisingly. Because it would usually be the
So,
other
in other words,
Helen, you got the deciding
yeah.
vote.
Which one, Helen? What's the best? And Peter? Peter says sparkling Shiraz.
Oh, Jesus, you made it harder again. What about Helen? Give us some feedback, Helen.
She's going to say, yeah, Pinot.
Oh, she do the Pinot and just really stuff it all completely.
In other words, they're all very good wines.
Yep. Yeah, honestly, all exceptionally good wines. They all show what Eden Valley is about. It is a cooler climate from Barossa. A longer growing period, you're going to get more flavour and intensity in your wines. You're going to get more complexity in your wines. It is an exceptional region to grow grapes, an exceptional region to make wine from. And I think we'll just leave it as the winner for the day will be Brockenchack then.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't be happy with any of these wines
Yeah,
for that
no.
price point.
I would say no.
Yeah.
It's exceptionally good. I think it's.
I will say the sparkling Shiraz surprised me because I'm not a sparkling Shiraz fan.
Oh really?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that.
Look,
But I still love the hair hunter.
Yeah. We'll go with that. Anyway, thank you for tuning in and drink well, drink like a savvy. Cheers.
Drink it all. Oh, we did. Sorry.